Tell you a little bit about the Icehogs. We're only about an hour down the road. I think it took me about an hour and 15 minutes to get here from downtown Rockford today. So not too far. Some things going on there. And then there's some pretty unique connections between Rockford and Madison in the hockey world that actually date back about, I don't know, 60, 70 years or so. And I'll touch on that a little bit. So first off, the Icehogs, like Adam mentioned, we're in the American Hockey League. This is our 24th season. Training camp for the Blackhawks and the rest of the NHL just started last Wednesday. So everything is kind of coming to a head for us. This is our crazy time of year. So our first game at home is October 22nd. Our first game is October 15th. So we're in like fast forward mode right now. So we actually started in the United Hockey League. Madison had a team in the UHL back in the mid to late 90s. And that's when Rockford first got professional hockey in 1999. It was the Madison Monsters. And I'm trying to think what the other one was. There was actually two, the Kodiaks. So I don't know if any of you, how many hockey fans are there here, by the way? Anyone? Yeah? Probably Badger fans? Yeah, it's a lot of our connection that I'll talk about. Anybody been down to Rockford for a game? Yeah? Awesome. So we've been the American Hockey League affiliate of the Blackhawks for now 16 years. This will be our 16th season. So if you're not super familiar with how pro hockey works, I always compare it to professional baseball. We would be the AAA level if you're comparing it to minor league baseball. So our players go directly from Rockford to the Chicago Blackhawks. So before, when we were in the United Hockey League, that was AA level. So they would have a couple of steps. Back in the late 90s, early 2000s, hockey wasn't really developed quite like what professional baseball is. But now it really is. The AA level is really, really good hockey, and players, the minor league systems are a lot deeper. So a lot of players will make their ways through, AA, which is the ECHL. It's an acronym that doesn't actually stand for anything anymore. It used to be the East Coast Hockey League, but there's teams across the country. Then they go to the American League, and then they go to the NHL. So we've had 139 different Icehogs players go on to play in the NHL, including 106 with the Blackhawks. Obviously, we've been with them for 16 years, and 25 have won the Stanley Cup. So one of the coolest things was we jumped to the American Hockey League in 2007. And if you're a loose NHL fan or a Blackhawks fan, that was the same summer that they drafted Patrick Kane. So our timing to jump to the American Hockey League was perfect. The Blackhawks, kind of taking a step back, the year before, Sports Illustrated, I don't know if they still do this, but they actually came out with a ranking of every single major league team of the quote unquote 4 major sports. And the Chicago Blackhawks were rated the worst team out of all 4 major sports in 2006. So they drafted Jonathan Taves, who was a North Dakota kind of alum, and Patrick Kane. And when we became affiliated with the Hawks, we had all these prospects that came to Rockford from Norfolk, Virginia. That's where their old affiliate was. And we got to see all these guys in Rockford for a couple of years. And 22 of them went on to win Stanley Cup with them when they won their 3 Stanley Cups over that 6-year span. So that was pretty cool. Corey Crawford, Brian Bickle, Nicholas Chalmerson. If you're Blackhawks fans, these names mean something. If you're not, I'm just throwing out names. But we had a lot of really, really good players come through Rockford. One of our big pillars to our organization, though, is our community relations. We've raised over $1.5 million in the 23 years that we've been around. It kind of sounds like a lot, kind of doesn't. Depends what kind of charity endeavors you've been a part of. I know this organization does an awesome job of doing that and giving back. But for a minor league hockey team, that's pretty significant. So we usually raise per season over $125,000, $130,000 for our different initiatives. So we're pretty proud of that, and all the money stays local in Rockford. So it's something we really try to tie in with the community. And one of our slogans is an organization that loves their community is going to love them back. So we love our community. So, and we've had a lot of fans. Over 3 million fans have attended games. Last 2 years have been a little rough with COVID, but we're looking for a bounce back here this year. 2 years ago was really bad. We didn't have anybody. We couldn't open the door, so we played in front of an empty building. Not ideal. A little bit about the organization. So the Blackhawks actually purchased the Icehogs last summer. We were owned kind of like the Packers. Actually, we were owned by the city of Rockford. Technically, the arena owned the team, but it's the city. But that COVID, one of the results of COVID, it put a big strain on our arena. It's an older building. We're going through some renovations. I'll touch on that in a second. But because of that, it just wasn't super feasible for the team to be owned by the building of the city. So the Blackhawks purchased the team last summer, and then in return, they signed a 10-year lease with the city of Rockford. So the team is committed there for at least 10 more years. And hopefully beyond. The Wirtz family, which owns the Blackhawks and owns the Icehogs, they have a strong affinity for Rockford. So, which is great because Rockford has gone through some rough times over the years. A lot of people in Rockford have Madison envy. So, but it's downtown Rockford has really come a long ways in the last 10, 12 years. And I like to think that the hockey team had a lot to do with it. And that's one of those impacts that a minor league team can have on an area. You think, oh yeah, you win, you lose, whatever, but it can really have a big economic impact on a town. Minor league baseball just went through that big reduction last year, 2 years ago, I guess it was now. And that hit personally with me, knowing that some of these communities were going to lose their team. Beloit would have lost their team if Diane Hendricks didn't step up and build that stadium. That team was gone. But there were towns that lost their team, and that's a huge blow to the economics, to civic pride, all that goes into it that you don't always think about when you see so and so team folded or some owner moved this team to some other market. A lot goes out the door. So the team, once this affiliation agreement expires, that'll be our 25th season with the Blackhawks, which is pretty unusual. Any Milwaukee Admiral fans in here? Anybody been to Milwaukee for Admirals games? Love those guys. They're our rivals, but they're great. We collaborate really well with them. They've had a really good relationship with the Nashville Predators over the years, and that's still going pretty strong. So they're one of the few teams that have a longer affiliation than us with the Blackhawks. The American Hockey League, real quick on that. It's the longest running professional hockey league in the world, thanks to the 2004 NHL lockout that canceled the season. So this is the 86th campaign for the American Hockey League. There's 32 teams in the AHL. There's one AHL team for every NHL team. So every NHL team has an American Hockey League affiliate. That wasn't the case last year because Seattle didn't have an AHL team. They do this year. So every team in the American Hockey League has an AHL or an NHL affiliate. And this right here is probably one of my favorite stats. Over 90% of the players on opening night rosters last year in the NHL spent time in the American Hockey League. And that is significant because of the amount of European players that are in the NHL. So a lot of players that come from Russia will come from Finland, from Sweden, from wherever. And almost all the players, 9 out of 10 of them, over 9 out of 10 of them have played in the American Hockey League. So it is truly like baseball. You go to a AAA baseball game or a AA baseball game or whatever level, a lot of those players will make it up. The difference is up to the majors. The difference is hockey isn't as deep, so there's fewer players. So you come to an Icehogs game or you go to an Admirals game or whatever it might be, and you're going to see probably 15 to 20 future NHLers on the ice that night, which is pretty cool. Here's a map of the American Hockey League. It's pretty widespread. It goes as far northwest as Abbotsford, British Columbia, which is a complete pain to get to. You have to fly to Vancouver and take like an 1.5-hour bus trip, but it's pretty country if you've ever been out there. It goes as far northeast as Laval, which is a suburb of Quebec, and as far southwest as San Diego. And then southeast, I guess, would be Charlotte. So it's obviously pretty concentrated, which is great for travel. We'll play this year. We go to Winnipeg. We actually open up in Winnipeg this year, and then we'll do a Canadian trip to Toronto, Belleville, Laval. We'll go to Colorado for the first time. Texas is actually in our division, and that's kind of the extent of our travel. Sometimes we'll go west, but it all just kind of depends. So it's kind of goofy because you don't play everybody. You don't even play everybody in your conference, but because of the way that it's set up and with the spread out nature of the league, we don't get a chance to play everybody. All right, real quick on some renovations. Has anybody been down to what was formerly known the Rockford Metro Center? It's now called the BMO Harris Bank Center. So the building just turned 40 years old last year. In 40 years, buildings can age pretty quick, as I'm sure a lot of you know. So part of the arrangement, if you will, with the Blackhawks buying the team, the state of Illinois gave the building $23 million for renovations. So It was supposed to be a 2-year plan, but it's a 3-year plan now. So we're in year 2. The first year, they tore out the entire ice floor and replaced that because when they tore it up 15 years ago, they screwed it up. So they had to redo it. That was only about a $1.5 million mistake. So unfortunately, a big chunk had to go to that. There was, just some boring behind the house stuff last year that went on. We got a new premium space area that's pictured right there, which is pretty cool. We have a new casino in Rockford. Actually, they're going to break ground on it Thursday. Hard Rock is putting a casino in Rockford. It's kind of funny. It was like a race between Hard Rock and Ho Chunk and Beloit. It was like back and forth, and like Ho Chunk got ahead, and then all of a sudden the Rockford casino, and finally they both basically got settled within about 8 months. So both Rockford and Beloit are going to have casinos. So I know. But anyways, Hard Rock's been a great community partner for us in town. This year, the video board should be on a truck right now from Texas, but it's delayed a little bit, so it's kind of screwing a few things up. But we're getting a huge new video board, which is pretty awesome. The LED ribbon board is being installed as we speak. So a lot of more fan-facing stuff that's going on in the renovations here. And then our premium spaces are just getting updated. They haven't really been updated for about 14 years. So a lot of really good fan-facing stuff that at the end of the day, we're entertainment. And a lot of the renovations this year are going to help us with our entertainment, right? You come to the game, you may not really know any of the players, you may not really care who wins or loses. Hopefully you root for the Icehogs, but you want to have a good time, and that's what we are. We're entertainment at the end of the day. All right, so the Rockford to Madison connection. Anybody know who this is? That's Jake Dowell. Jake was on the Badgers national championship team in 2005, right? Was that right? Or 2006? 2006. And he's actually our all-time leading games played player in franchise history. I think he's played 340 games with the Icehogs. He probably played about 200 games in the NHL. He's got an awesome story. If you have time and you remember, look up Jake Dowell. His dad and his brother had Huntington's disease. And ESPN actually did a couple of really, really good stories on him. And if you don't know what Huntington's disease is, it's like ALS. It's a terrible, terrible disease. And both his dad and his brother passed away. It's hereditary. Jake, so that's why ESPN picked up the story. He hadn't been tested for this disease, and he didn't want to get tested because he was afraid if he tested positive, he wouldn't get another contract. So he held off, didn't get tested. They did a big story on it. We actually started a bowl-a-thon, and it went to the Huntington's disease. It was one of the few fundraisers that we did that didn't go back to Rockford. It actually went back to Madison and Eau Claire, where Jake's from. Dowell, D-O-W-E-L-L, Jake Dowell. So he left the Blackhawks organization, he played for Wild for a bit, bounced around, came back. Well, his wife got pregnant. So he came to a crossroads, and on the way into practice one morning, called up our doc, said, I want to get tested. Doc's like, are you sure? He's like, yep, after practice day, I'm going to go get tested. He got tested and he came back negative, which was huge. Same thing that we have, our heart condition. Once the strain is broke, you can't pass it on. So he's got a couple kids. He lives in Madison now. He's doing great, and he's just an awesome guy. So pretty cool story about Jake. So the ties that go way back to Rockford. There was a resort in Rockton, Illinois called the Wagon Wheel. Anybody hear the Wagon Wheel? Everybody remember the Wagon Wheel? All right, so the Wagon Wheel Cardinals. So the Wagon Wheel was a resort. It was burned down. I don't know how many times it caught fire, but it was a pretty high-end resort, as a lot of you probably remember. Bob Hope used to go there. The Blackhawks held training camp there. They would host college hockey games there. The Badgers would go down and play Notre Dame there. It was a pretty big deal. And they had a semi-pro team in the 50s and 60s called the Wagon Wheel Cardinals. And what is unique about that is most of the players that played for the Wagon Wheel Cardinals were actually Badgers, former Badgers that lived in this area. So there were so many former Badgers and so many people, so many guys from Madison that played for the Wagon Wheel Cardinals. There was a bus dedicated to bringing them back and forth to Rockton. So that which was pretty cool. I put a note on there. Yeah, it had an airstrip, which was pretty unique at the time. Had a golf course, which there still is the golf course there. It's called Red Barn. The ice rink. There was a bowling alley. All that stuff. So it was a pretty high-end resort. And saw a few hands go up, so I'm sure you remember it. So, but Red Barn Golf Course is still there. So that golf course is still there. We actually last year, we planned on doing this a couple years ago, but COVID kind of screwed it up. We rebranded as the Wagon Wheel Cardinals last year for a game. So we wore the jersey right there that you can see the picture on the bottom right. And you can see actually one of the original team photos. So we actually replicated their jerseys. We wore them for a night. There's actually a former player who I guess was probably their best player that played for him, still lives in the Rockford area. His name's Todd Osai. He came back and dropped the ceremony first puck, and it was pretty cool. So a lot of people in the state line area definitely remember the Wagon Wheel. So, but there's definitely a huge connection with Madison. And I learned all this over the last couple of years as we were researching the Wagon Wheel and kind of the significance of it. And yeah, it was basically the Badgers South at the time. So. All right, so did I go back? No, there we go. All right, so here's some more Badgers that have played for the Icehogs. Two names on there I want to point out: Brad Winchester and Mark Osiki. Mark actually was our assistant coach. It's weird calling him Mark, but they're both the Badgers assistant coaches right now. If you're Badger fans, Winnie's a Madison native. Went to West. He played baseball against you, didn't you? Yep. So he played in the NHL for a long time. He's now back in town here. Oz is a Burnsville, Minnesota native, but he went to the dark side and played for the Badgers. Had quite a career. Badgers I love the Badger hockey. That program is pretty awesome. They've got a lot of all these guys listed here are former Badgers. But Oz coached. He actually got the Ohio State head coaching job. As coaching goes, you're hired to be fired. He got fired from Ohio State. Came to Rockford. He was our assistant coach for, I think it was 3 years. And then he came back up to Madison here. And now he's back being the assistant coach. I think he's the associate head coach. I think is his official title. Not 100% sure on that. But there's just some other names. And Ross Carlson, Jake Dowell, Jack Skilly. Jack was another Madison native. I'm sure if you're a big Badger fan, you probably remember that name. He played for the Icehogs for quite a while and had a nice NHL career as well. So, what's that? Jack. Yep. And then him and who's Blake Kessel, right? They were the same year, and they had a little rivalry at the time. Jack went to Wisconsin, and Blake I think went up to Minnesota. But yeah, again, it's pretty cool to see a lot of these when we get some of these former Badgers, especially guys like Jack, who was a really highly touted prospect at the time. I think he was the 5th overall pick in the NHL draft. But you had quite a few people from this area come down to watch him. Of course, it helps too that he was from Madison. But another really good guy. So I enjoyed Jack. All right. It goes beyond on the ice, by the way. So these 3 individuals up on the slide here, all 3 work in the front office with the Blackhawks. Megan Hunter. She played for the Badgers women's team back in early 2000 when they were just winning national championship after national championship. She's now the assistant GM on the hockey side for the Blackhawks. I believe she's the 5th woman to be named assistant GM up in the NHL. Jamie Spencer also played for the Badgers back in the early 90s. He was alternate captain. He missed the 91 national championship year. His freshman year was 92. But he went the business route. So he played for the Badgers, but then he is now on the business side and he oversees all the revenue for the Blackhawks. And then Alex Brooks played about the same time Megan did. He was a little bit after Megan. I think they overlap, but he's the head pro scout for the Blackhawks now. He's a Madison native as well. Yep. Alex, a real good guy. And then here's some just other notable Badgers that have played in the NHL. There's been 91 total Badgers alumni that have played in the NHL over the years. Some of the best: Chris Chelios, Mike Richter, Hall of Famers, Curtis Joseph, Scott Mellenby, Danny Heatley, and then some guys that are playing right now. A couple of Stevens Point guys: Joe Pavelski and Cole Caulfield. Of course, like Anna mentioned, I'm a pointer. Any other pointers in here? No. That's close enough. It's close enough. So and then Ryan Suter still playing, Ryan McDonough and Kyle Turris. So there's a lot of really, really good hockey players in the NHL and in the American League that made it up. And then Adam Burrish on the right there, he won the national championship with the Badgers in 06. And then he won Stanley Cup with the Blackhawks as well in 2010. So he didn't come to Rockford. He made the team the year that the affiliation came to Rockford. So we had a jersey and everything for him, and he made the Blackhawks. So which was awesome. Yeah, so that's pretty much it. Anybody have any questions? Yeah.
So how does it work for who pays for the salaries for the players? I mean, the NHL games, I mean, some of these players are like draft picks, so they get signing bonuses and all that stuff. But who compensates? How does that work for who pays for who?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the easy answer to that right now is Blackhawks paid for all that because they own the team. Before, when we weren't owned by them, and I'll use Milwaukee as an example, and I can't like 100% say they do this for every single player, but the way we did it, we had it set up before. The Blackhawks, when we weren't owned by the Blackhawks and we were just affiliates, the Blackhawks still paid that contract. So we would pay about $1 million a year in an affiliation fee, and that wouldn't cover contracts, but it would cover the coaches, the trainers, and you know that whole support staff. But it's kind of goofy in hockey from the standpoint of we've had like Brian Bickle, who was a longtime Blackhawk player. He played in Rockford for a while as he was making his way up, played with the Blackhawks. He had a lot of injuries. It turned out he had MS, which is why they couldn't figure out what was going on with him. He still played for a while, but he got sent down to Rockford. He was making $4.5 million playing in Rockford because he was on a one-way contract. So there's different kinds of contracts. Not to bore everybody, but like the rookies, if you're drafted, let's say I'm drafted and I'm signed by the Blackhawks, there's two different levels of pay that I would get. The one that I get when I'm in the American Hockey League, and then there's the NHL pay I'd get if I was in the National Hockey, if that makes sense. So they do have different pay. Now the entry level contracts, they're all associated with the signing bonus as well. So, but it's quite a bit different. I mean, they're still making good money. The range is probably $80,000 to $125,000 in the American Hockey League, and then if they're in the NHL, I think league minimum now is like, I don't even know, 700,000 maybe. So it's quite the difference being up and down. So, but the key is to get that one-way contract because then you get paid same. Yeah, but that usually doesn't happen until at least your second, if not third. Good question. I should have mentioned that earlier. The seating capacity is just under 6,000. With all of our suites and everything full, you could probably squeeze about 6,500. So it's perfect for the Rockford size market and that level. You know, we'd like to sell out every game, but we only really need about 3,500 people in there, and the atmosphere. So, yeah, yeah. Go ahead. It's funny because Adam asked that. So because we weren't Blackhawks employees, we didn't get rings. We joked we didn't even get a box of t-shirts. But it probably would be different now because we're Blackhawks employees now since they own the team. But yeah, all the coaches got them. And then so same with the trainers because they all go up and they help. Yeah, they're huge. I mean, you could probably wear them. I could probably wear one on 3 fingers.
Do all the area high schools in the Rockford area, they all have hockey?
They don't.
That's what I kind of heard.
Yeah. So it is. It's in ice time isn't as readily available. There's a combined high school team with a couple of the high schools there. So yeah, so it is a challenge from that standpoint. We've had one player from Rockford make to the Icehog. So, but yeah, it's the high school hockey. It's a little bit thinner down in Illinois. 76. Yep. The NHL plays 82. They actually just reduced the number. We played 78. At one point, we were playing 80. So, yep. Actually, I'm sorry. We're down to 72. We're down to 72 now. We used to play 76. We're down to 72. Say that again. Yeah, it's kind of similar. There's 8 teams. Actually, last year I think there was 10 teams. So yeah, they kind of went the baseball route last year. And to be honest, I don't even know what they decided for this year. I should know that, but I guess I don't know if we're doing that again. But yeah, it's 8 to 10 teams from each conference.
What's the rationale for not playing all the teams in the league? Is it just the cost of travel?
Travel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I know you didn't say anything about going to the West Coast.
Yeah, we don't. If you go back to that map here. And honestly, the problem is the East Coast teams. A lot of the teams out east, they sleep in their own bed almost every night. They have to go to Charlotte, and then they have to probably go up to Laval and hit Belleville. Where our conference, like we're kind of on a Midwest island. We have to travel. We'll go down to Texas twice. We'll go up to Winnipeg twice. You know, and so you know, and if we go out west, we'll try to hit up like San Diego, Coachella Valley, which is that Firebird. They're the new team this year. They're in Palm Springs. So you can hit those teams up in one weekend, play 3 games. But it's all money. You know, that adds up quick. Say that one more time. They do at times, yeah, because we only have 2 ice rinks in Rockford, and one of them is actually out of commission right now, so they're replacing their ice floor. Should be open in a couple of weeks, but because we only have two sheets, yeah, they use our arena. So that's a great question. I remember when I did play hockey, I actually played for West Flyers, and I remember it was so cool playing at the Coliseum. You know, I was like, this is where the Badgers play, you know, it's before they had the Kohl Center built. And, you know, some nights we'd practice after the Badgers, and that was the coolest thing ever. There's Dwayne Dirksen, you know, or whoever would be going at the time. Do you have a question?
Yeah, so I'm not, does everybody play everybody, or is there a winner of the American Hockey League? Or do you have a couple, are you regions or what?
Yeah, it's a great question. So we're divided up into conferences, and the dividing line, if you see where it says Griffins, that's Grand Rapids, Michigan. Everything west of Grand Rapids is the Western Conference. Everything to the right of them is the Eastern Conference.
So we're the Western?
Yep. So, yeah, then we go into a playoff system, and the East plays the West in the finals.
How many national teams are there? How many, in the kind of, you know, Blackhawks and.
In the National Hockey League, there's 32. Yep, same number as American Hockey League teams. Yeah, you're back.
Do you have any good Stanley Cup stories?
Stanley Cup story.
From when the Blackhawks won and the cup got passed around?
Man.
No, I don't have any.
Yeah, I wish I had more spirit. I mean, there's a really good book on. It's called "Why is the Stanley Cup in the Bottom of Mario Pool?" That's got all the stories, and that actually explains why there's the keeper of the cups. We're actually trying to get the Stanley Cup back to Rockford this year. We've had it out 4 times, so it's pretty cool. If you've never seen the Stanley Cup, it's a pretty awesome trophy to see. Yeah.
How big's your rivalry with Chicago?
I hate the Wolves. The Wolves won the championship last year. Yeah, the Wolves are. Oh man, those guys. We get along well with the front office, but so the Wolves are set up a little bit different. This is a complete sidebar. You asked how like the contracts work. The Wolves are actually one of the only teams that will go and pay their own players.
That what?
They pay their own players. So they have an affiliation. They're actually affiliated with Carolina Hurricanes. They can't keep an affiliate because they want to run their own show. They don't want prospects per se. So they pay some extra money to players to come to Chicago and play. So that's why they're always good. That's why it always rubs us. But they're always good. But we do get along well with in their hockey apps.
Yeah. You talked about how you have travel expenses, you know, to go to a lot of these places, but many of those East Coast teams don't.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any like sharing of expenses through the league? Or are you liable for 100% of your traveling expenses?
Yeah, we are. Yeah, we are liable for all the travel expenses. At one point, and like when Charlotte came into the league, you can see they're kind of out in an island. In order to get into the league, they had to agree to subsidizing some travel, but they waived that a few years ago. So, and everybody wanted to go to Charlotte because half the trip was paid for, right? So, yeah.
So what is it you see in Adam?
What do I see? It's a fair. Oh. Well, like you said, I mean, we were super close growing up. We still are, and yeah, I mean, you could probably see a lot of similarities between us, but yeah, we're basically the same guy.
With a pair of glasses on.
Yeah.
Kenny or mini me.
Yeah. Wait, who's the mini me? I'm his or he's mine? Well, thank you all very much. I hope everybody. I appreciate you having me on. Yeah. Yeah.
All right.